I'm Jason Klom, and this is the Comedy on Vinyl podcast. The year is 1971, the album Cheech and Chong, the artist Cheech and Chong. My guest this week is David Swartz, calling from Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. Detroit area?
Yes, just outside of Detroit, Jason. I'm in around about 15 minutes right outside of downtown.
We originally were in contact because I found a piece of your art. So people who know this podcast have heard me talk endlessly about this show that I'm in called A Drinking Game, and I have played Vizzini in A Princess Bride a number of times, and I found your art of Vizzini. Thank goodness it was properly credited. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known about it. I hate when people just like, hey, look at this fun thing I found, and they don't put the name of the damn artist. And it's just wonderful, like comic style art, but that obviously doesn't even begin to describe. But either way, that's how we got in contact, basically just because I love Vizzini and I love your art of it. And I'm glad that you had an album to pick. So let's, as we were talking about before we started recording, you have some family reasons for picking this album.
Yes. So when I was a kid, obviously when I became a little bit more of age, my mom used to always sort of recite a lot of these Cheech and Chong jokes. Obviously, since my name is Dave, that's sort of like a huge, kind of joke within my family.
Of course.
The whole Dave's not your main thing. But yeah, I mean, my mom, like I said, she's always been a huge fan, and I've kind of always been hearing these jokes as I've grown up.
What are the odds she named you after the sketch?
I would say very little. She actually wanted to name me Elliot, which turned out to be my middle name.
Oh, okay.
But still, no, I think she really enjoyed certain new kind of qualities that Cheech and Chong brought, I think, to their type of humor.
Yeah. Do you, let's talk. So you grew up with it and you haven't tired of it. So that's a bonus. You said you just listened to it 3 times in preparation, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Actually, when I sit down and do art, it's pretty much the mainstay of what I do. I'm also a teacher, but when I sit down to do artwork, I'm usually listening to some podcast or a comedy special or something like that, and it was just something nice I could put on last couple of days in preparation for this.
I love it. Do you have a particular favorite that you think is more re-listenable than other things?
It's funny. Well, I mean, there's so many good ones on that album. There's something to me about I think it's probably just the Super Trooper type quality, because I think obviously Super Troopers in that opening scene was inspired by the whole sketch where they're getting into a car and doing some illicit things, and then Cheech thinks that there's a cop behind him, so they gotta quick get rid of the evidence, and it turns out it's just nameless. So I personally just love that type of humor that kind of like gotcha at the end. Very reminiscent of for me, I love like Key and Peele. That kind of sketch comedy is just really, really funny and cleverly written.
Oh yeah, no, Key and Peele, they changed the game in just so many ways. What's your history with sketch comedy in general? Do you have a particular preference for sketch comedy, or stand up?
I mean, I would say I love them both. I'm just always fascinated by comics and their way of telling a story, because I'm a storyteller myself. So any way that I can kind of absorb that method of communication, I really enjoy. But when it comes between stand-up and sketch comedy, I think the one thing that kind of edges out sketch comedy for me is the fantasy of it and all kinds of different things that you can do with that type of world that you want to create, as evident by all the diverse things and characters that, sketch comics have come up with over the years. I mean, SNL being one of the major tentpoles, but, I even like, trying to think of the name of that one. There's all kinds of like really small independent sketch family, like Portlandia is one of them too that I really enjoy as well. But no, I mean, it's even for me, like I always go back to Whose Line Is It Anyway? Even though it's kind of like a, really popular, like overproduced type of thing.
Sure.
It's still like really clever, and the guys that were performing in that show are super talented.
Oh yeah, no, there's a lot of skill going into it. It's one of those. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's giving somebody who's got the independent spirit and skill of somebody who's kind of hard scrabble and could do it, on the streets if they had to, but have been fortunate enough to be given a little bit of money and a huge audience. So at least they haven't lost all that skill and polish.
Right. No, 100%.
Do you? So let's talk a little bit about your art. Let's talk about the stuff that's on your website. First of all, you do standees for people.
Yeah, so my main work is in the comic book world, but a couple years ago I was on Kickstarter, and they had this I think it was it called like Make 100, where they were just trying to get you to do a small project for a target of 100 backers. So I had come up with this idea one Christmas for some family members to create these little mini standees. So like if anyone is familiar with, going to the movies, you're going to see like some kind of cardboard cutout, and in the, older days, they could only do maybe like a character or two. So, I figured why not make a miniature version of that you can put on your desk at work or, on your mantle above your fireplace, or even with a couple magnets on the back, you could, attach it to your fridge. So I created a couple of prototypes, and then I got the idea, well, why not put, these are likable characters that have, quotes. Why not make, like little quote bubbles that you can exchange and change out for a new one whenever you feel like you want to change it. So I put the whole thing together, and everybody seemed to like it so much that I thought, why not put it out there on a Kickstarter and see if other people like it. And I think I wound up making close to, I think I made about 80 or so in that first run, and then I did probably about another 30 or 40 after the Kickstarter for other people. But they're super popular. People really love them. They're really great gifts.
Yeah. Have you ever had to commission? I'm trying to look. Well, you got a Weird Al one. There's plenty of comedy related ones in here. The Weird Al ones, they're all good, but I like the Weird Al one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot of characters that are outside of, I would say, like popular movies and TV shows.
Sure.
Weird Al's probably one of those that's kind of an outlier. I mean, he's sort of an icon in himself. But no, I mean, I've got I think somebody requested the entire cast of Archer, so I think I got almost 8 different Archer characters on there.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, some of the more popular ones are ones that you would expect, like Darth Vader, Indiana Jones, Captain Kirk. Yeah. So, but again, they're super fun. I mean, a lot of them are already created, but then I can make custom ones. So, if anybody wants something, they got something in particular. I've even made some of original characters for other comic books. So.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm seeing number characters that I've played on stage. I feel like there's a ton here that I just need to, dig into. Like at some point, like I said, I'm going to have to talk to the people who do a drinking game here and just can you please have him do all of us in character as our favorite characters? We've done, 90 shows or something out here. So we've done a lot of different things.
Sure.
So I'm curious what your influences are, because I don't know comics well, so feel free to, it's okay. I'm not going to know a lot of your references, but I'm curious what your influences are in terms of drawing, and if you have any specific comedy influences in terms of art. I don't know if there's any actual funny comic books that have influenced you, if you're a writer as well.
Sure. I mean, God, honestly, off the top of my head, it's hard for me to draw a line. But I will say that, when I do approach writing, I do want to put in, a healthy amount of comedic relief. I think, any kind of story, if you don't have a little bit of humor in there, it doesn't add the appropriate amount of contrast. I'm an art teacher as well, so a lot of what I tell my students, I believe are kind of fundamentals that can be applied to any type of artistic pursuit, whether it's drawing and painting, or in comedy, or even being a podcaster. If you don't have the appropriate amount of certain things, it's just not going to be interesting and compelling for people to pay attention to.
For sure. There is an element of comic book art that, at least to me, and maybe I am just going crazy interpreting it this way, but it's the exact opposite of sketch comedy, but the same in terms of it's got to be, to draw a comic book, to fill out a comic book, what is it, 40 pages in your average comic book, you have to tell a story strictly visually. Usually the story has to be told, would have to translate if somebody couldn't read, I feel like, most of the time. And you have to do the exact opposite with a sketch album or something, but it's also it has to be so rich. And like Cheech and Chong and other guys like the Firesign Theater, they have the richest design and mixing to make you so involved. And it feels to me like the few times I've ever read a comic and really, really loved it, I didn't get into them as much as my friends did. It feels like it's just as rich an experience, but just visually.
So, for Cheech and Chong, they have to create an immersive experience with, their sketch comedies. So, between the impressions that they do, the voices, the sounds that they create in the background to really immerse you into the environment. It's the same thing with sequential art. You need to be able to create that world visually. You need to be able to pull people into it, pushing and pulling them, doing close-up shots and then backing off and doing far-away shots, and, making that flow back and forth in order to pull people into the story. It's the same thing with comedy. You want to be able to lift people up and then maybe get down and talk to them serious for a minute, but then lift it back up and make them laugh again. That's, I think, what makes the greats great.
What's interesting is with sketch comedy, you're always trying to make audio as visual as possible so that you can just picture it with you're always going to have your own interpretation, which is fun. But it gives you enough familiar to draw from and enough that's interesting and new that you're going to laugh and you're going to keep listening. I'm wondering what you might do with comic book art that is essentially the same thing. I'm wondering how you do that, the opposite to people.
That's an interesting question. I think that the things that really make a comic book work with the story that it's telling, I think it all boils down to the style in which you're doing it. I personally have more of like a cartoony, animated type style. It's a bit more simplified. There's not as much contouring with the line. It's a lot more edgy, kind of harder edged things. But then, you have a myriad of different styles out there. But the thing is the style needs to be able to, fit the story. So like if you have, say, like a horror story that's really gory and gritty and gnarly and dirty, you're going to want that quality in the artwork. You're going to want something that's really dark and gritty and have lots of, detail in it, lots of really dark, ink and tone to it. But then if you have something on the opposite side of the scale that's supposed to be light and fun and, kind of more airy, then you want something that has a softer edge to it with less ink and, less of that extra stuff, very clean, lots of, attention to form, less attention to detail. So honestly, I think for artwork, creating that immersive type experience, it comes down to the style in which you choose to do it.
That makes sense. Are you, I'm trying to think, because I'm looking at some of your art on your website right now, and I love any art that's eclectic, where I can see, oh, look at that influence. Oh, look, they're trying to do this. Like even clearly the way you you've drawn some of these things is not the same as the last thing. They're clearly like, hey, here's a little Jack Kirby, but here is definitely not Jack Kirby. There's all these different influences. Are you afraid of a busy frame? It doesn't look like you are. It looks like you're okay. Is it okay if it doesn't necessarily simplify it, or gives people an opportunity where they've got to look at every damn corner of it to make sense of it?
Well, I personally don't shy away from that. I find that if you really dial things up to 11, it's just going to make for a much more compelling image. I studied under a Marvel artist who taught me a lot about trying to take things to another level. I used to draw things in a little bit more of a rigid kind of fashion, and I think a lot of it was just my naivete. I didn't really know the subtle nuances of how to make an image that much more compelling. And he taught me, to take things and just turn it, twist it, give it some weird form to it, like the human body isn't so straight, or organic things aren't so straight, you got to give it a little bit of a twist. So I think, a lot of that goes into, creating, any kind of really compelling, awesome artwork. For me, sometimes it may get a little bit busy. But that's the stroke of a good artist, is if you can do something really good with a busy composition without it getting too crazy and too distracting. If you can still maintain your focal point, if you still have an area of the composition that someone zeroes in on, then you can do it. As long as you don't get too crazy with it.
Yeah.
But it's possible.
Well, there are some sketches on this album that even make me think of that, in terms of like stuff will be going on and it happens on a lot of Firesign albums too, but where the background audio kind of starts to drown out the primary audio a little bit, not entirely. You can still hear it, but it forces you to listen. And where I feel like so active listening it's more important than I remembered, because I love Cheech and Chong, but I had forgotten one of the things I liked doing was listening so hard to make sure I got every joke, even though the jokes are simpler than some other comedy groups. Like you still got to listen.
I totally agree with you on that. I was experiencing the very same thing when I was re-listening to it recently. Because there were a couple of times I actually remember skipping back and re-listening to it and just trying to make sure that I heard everything in that joke, because it could be the way that their accent is, or just like you were saying, the way that the audio mix is. Sometimes you miss something. So it's a good point. Maybe doing that in a way to force people to sit and really listen to it more carefully.
Yeah. And it's I'm also fine with good, passive, really well-produced comedy too, where, I'm listening and, okay, cool. They gave me a great joke. I laughed really hard. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. But the stuff that got me into doing sketch, which, audio sketch is not a thing people do as much. They kind of do it on podcasts sometimes, but not in the same way. It's unless, it's like Super Ego, in which case that's still improvised. You don't hear it as much, and that's the stuff that got me so deep into it, is just all the little details, and I didn't discover it through radio like guys of that generation did, where they're like, oh, I want to make, an old radio drama, or I want to make an old radio comedy, but nobody's doing those, so I guess I'm going to do a weird album about pot. The thing that always blew my mind, though, and I've talked about it before, is I know it is, but I don't really think of Cheech and Chong as stoner comedy, because I didn't grow up smoking weed, and I still found the characters funny as hell.
Well, that's the thing is, if you can craft a joke that isn't necessarily for a particular audience, it's just funny because it's funny, then it doesn't matter if it, hits the specific audience that you may be marketing it towards. Really, I think that's the brilliance of Cheech and Chong is, their jokes sort of transcend any kind of, demographic, I think, because the jokes are just funny. It's that sort of like gotcha kind of joke at the very end where, you don't really see it coming, you kind of see it coming a little bit. but then they kind of give it a little bit of a twist, and sometimes it's like, okay, you think you know where it's going, but then no, it goes in a little bit of a different direction.
Right.
Especially that first sketch where they're in the radio station and they're laying down what's his name? It's the blues singer guy.
Blind Melon Chip.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God, it's so funny.
It's so dumb. I and I'd forgotten. There's some stuff that I'm like that I'd forgotten was a little quite racially insensitive. But then I'd also forgotten that he is playing a shitty producer character who's supposed to be an asshole. So there's so much where I'm like, oh right, because you listen to the rest of it, and there are a couple really great bits where they're dealing with some stuff that we're dealing with now in terms of immigration, etc. Where I'm like, oh shit, right, yeah, because they would have been thinking about that more than a white comic would have at the time.
Right.
Well,
and the other joke I was just going to chime in and say that kind of struck me too with the way things are today. The joke where I think it was like the Pope or something, where he basically is like told, you got to sleep with a woman, and he's like, no, I will not do this, and then it's like, oh, it's the mob, I want you to do this. Oh, okay. He says all these things about how she's got to be blind and deaf and all this thing, so she can't really see who it is. But at the very end, it's like, oh, she got to have big boobs too, It's like, oh, really? Would that flatter it?
Yeah, I'm gonna say probably not. Their idea of, even if it is satirical, it's like, well, okay, yeah, no, I don't think anybody could quite do this sketch now.
Right.
I don't know what they do on stage now. I have no idea. I'm assuming it's mostly their weed stuff when they perform. I couldn't tell you. But after all, they've got a bottom line to think about. I mean, Tommy Chong literally sells weed now. He's living his dream, so.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny. I actually knew somebody who was in possession of Tommy Chong actually made some of his own like water bongs.
Oh, okay.
He did the glass blowing and everything, and I guess it was like a Tommy Chong bong, and it was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
That's kind of great. I don't think I realized he did that. It blows me away that he would even have the patience to say. He literally lost his keys in the middle of his interview with me, and it's one of my favorite things that's ever happened on the show. I love it so much. I was just like in the middle of like, oh my God, I just had a Cheech and Chong moment on the show. It was kind of I had never heard a couple of these sketches. I'm realizing I'm a big fan, but sometimes if I've got it in my collection, I wait until somebody picks it to listen to it. So this is kind of fresh. I'd never heard the emergency ward sketch, and man, if that isn't really, really, really funny, just the two of them.
I know. Yeah, that I totally could have seen that as like a Comedy Central sketch.
Yeah,
like I was almost envisioning it as I was listening to that one in particular.
Well, and the acting shined through because I love Tommy Chong, but Cheech Marin is like, he's got a lot of range with his voices and stuff, and like he's such an emotional actor where it's like his laughs seem real. They both seem to really like be invested in the situation. Which kind of makes you remember it's not just a bunch of drug jokes. Like, this is literally about two assholes betting on what this guy coming up to the emergency counter has. Like, they're trying to figure out. It's so insane. But yeah, it does kind of feel like a Key and Peele sketch to me.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I totally agree with you too with Cheech Marin's range. I think he does a particularly good job playing like that white dude voice. I don't even know how else to describe it, but it's like when he does it, it's like, wow, it doesn't even really sound like him anymore.
I know.
It's very well.
It's nuts. I don't know enough about like what I'm about where I think he was raised in LA, but like to be able to completely lose an accent, completely have his own accent when he needs it, to do a fairly convincing woman when he needs to do it, and some other voices,
right?
Some less sensitive voices, but he still does them very well. His range is ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always love listening to those two, and I actually a while back going back to where I kind of got this from, being introduced to it from my mom, for her, I think it was for her birthday. I bought her all the albums on Amazon. And then I like kind of made up, because I mean it's on Amazon, so you don't really need to make a CD of it,
Right.
Even though she's still a little stuck in that CD age,
Sure.
still wants me to burn her CDs all the time. But I like made up this little like DVD thing, and it was I made up the little jacket for it, and I kind of put it together as like the Cheech and Chong greatest hits like collection type thing. So and I got thinking about it, I was like, man, really wish that I could get my hands on something like that for real. But it was a fun project to play with and put together some artwork for. It was almost like I was making a comedy album for him.
Oh, that's so good. I love that. I love that your mom loves them that much. I think I got introduced to them by my mom, but she wouldn't let me listen. Like, she didn't let me listen early because she's like, she didn't want me to do drugs. It's like, Mom, I'm the nerdiest nerd. Like, I'm not. I'll be fine. Do you not know me? And so I love that so much that's something you share. Do you have any siblings?
Yeah. So I have a younger brother, and then I have two older half siblings. They're much older than me, but my brother and I think he and I really, when we were kids, we were thick as thieves, and I would say we're a little bit kind of like a Cheech and Chong. My brother was a little more Cheech, I was a little more Chong.
Did you pass on those albums to him at all, or like did you introduce him, or did your mom introduce him to you at the same time?
Having my mom bringing me over at some family events or something like that, and just listening in on to some of these dirtier jokes as I got a little bit older. So that was always fun, getting to listen to some of that stuff.
And share that stuff with like your mom it's always like when you're a kid, when you laugh at the stuff that you don't get, it's kind of fun when you get a little bit older to be like, I get that now, Mom. That's pretty good. Thanks for sharing this with me.
I know. Yeah, that blows my mind. You go back and you listen to things that you listen to as a kid, you listen to it as a adult, and you go, oh my God, that is a sex joke. I had no idea.
I'm wondering, like, look, I'm guessing I can't necessarily determine the pop culture you were exposed to by your art, except to say that, oh, wow, this is, like, really good. But is there anything in here that you weren't exposed to before somebody asked you to draw it? In terms of these standees, anyway?
Yeah, in terms of standees. Well, there were a couple of, I think there was one video game character. God, I can't even remember it off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. Here, let me get to it. But no, there was a video game character that I did that was really cool, and I never heard of before, but it was a really fun piece to draw. But I would say for the most part, I think I recognized most of the characters. I think I did like the Gravity Falls character, the Dipper and Mabel. I wasn't as familiar with because that's sort of newer animation. But let's see. Oh, and then there's like the Scud character. He's an Image Comics character. That was a character I wasn't really as familiar with, but. The video game one I was talking about is from Overwatch. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that. But, for the most part, I was pretty familiar with all of them. I think some of my favorites were the black and white ones, the Vincent Price and the Dr. Frankenstein from Young Frankenstein, the Gene Wilder version.
Yeah, I like those a lot. Those are great. Boy, oh boy. Yeah, these are all... What's fun is, like, these bring back memories of shows that I've done, but also, obviously, stuff that I absolutely love. Like, so we've got... Let's see. There you go. There's Dr. Frankenstein from Young Frankenstein. You got Vizzini. You got your Marty McFly. You got the Dude. You have Snape. You've got some Star Wars stuff. There's... Oh, man, I love these. It sounds like this is me just promoting your stuff, which I guess it is, but I'm legitimately kind of, like, hung up on looking at these. You've got at least 4 Batmans, which is great, and a Catwoman. I'm at this point now. Okay, so let's say, would you ever do, for at least even for yourself, would you do a Cheech and Chong, or is there some other sketch comedy or other comedy that you would want to represent your love of comedy on your desk or wherever you would keep these?
I mean, Cheech and Chong is a really good idea. I haven't had that requested yet, but I would love to do that because they got some really good little quotes I could put together for their bubbles.
Oh yeah.
But I'm always a fan of I always loved like Eddie Murphy for some reason. Like I always loved his stuff, especially his work on SNL. Like just killer stuff. Even it was the joke on the Cheech and Chong album where obviously the classic one, the Dave's Not Here joke. Yeah. That whole sketch reminded me so much of Eddie Murphy's Mr. Robinson sketch.
Oh,
the take on Rogers. Oh my goodness. I just, for whatever reason, when I was listening to that joke the other day, I got transported back to watching that sketch with Eddie Murphy, and I was like, oh my God, funny. They got qualities that are very similar about them. It was very interesting.
Did you, I don't know if you saw this or not, but did you see how much money Eddie Murphy might be getting to do another comedy special, but for Netflix?
I did not, but I can only guess it was just out of this world.
What's your first guess?
Oh boy,
it's a fun game.
Probably 100 million.
You know what? You're not far off 70, but it might go up higher. Who knows? But I mean,
see, I would have totally guessed at least 100 million.
Yeah, but I mean, for one special. Well, I mean, if people have been waiting to see him come back. He's got some stuff to say.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, man. I mean, it's one of those things where, God, I can't even remember the last time he did anything really, not just even sketch comedy, but really anything in popular culture.
Well, I can tell you he's also got a Netflix movie coming out where he plays a guy who did a ton of comedy albums. It's called Dolomite Is My Name. I love that I'm promoting a movie. I'm only promoting it because one of my best friends is in it, and he's in an Eddie Murphy movie. He's got a few scenes in it with him. I cannot wait.
That's right.
Yeah, it's called Dolomite Is My Name, but about a guy named Rudy Ray Moore who did very filthy poetry, and then he also played Dolomite in the blaxploitation movies called Dolomite, whatever they were called. But yeah, but Eddie Murphy plays Rudy Ray Moore, so I cannot wait to see that. That's gonna be exciting. Are there any have you ever done any albums? Like, you've ever designed any album art for music or comedy?
I the only one I ever did was for my own band back in high school.
Awesome.
Yeah, but no, I never really had an opportunity to do any kind of album work professionally. Most of my work is a little bit more on that cartoony side, so I think it's only applicable to maybe like a very, very small portion of music out there, I would imagine. But I would love to do a comedy album. That would actually be really fun.
I mean, now that I think about it, that kind of drawing specialty is so suited to comedy albums. When I was looking at some website the other day, I was looking at some distributor that I'd never heard of, this comedy record label, and I was just looking through. It's like, there's not one of these albums looks the same. Also, some of them look really shitty, but most of them are very good, but they all look different. It's a nice eclectic feel where it's like, I feel like somebody with your skills would be like, oh yeah, hell, I could do a comedy album. Did you have the physical? So I assume your mom had the vinyl.
Yeah. Actually, my mom just recently got rid of her collection. I mean, she didn't have a huge collection, but enough for her to say, hey, I think we need to get some more space in the house. But no, yeah, she had the original vinyl. I'm not sure if she ever really played the original vinyl for us, but I do remember seeing it. It was prominently featured.
Yeah, I always wonder, because a lot of those, then there are a couple really great Cheech and Chong ones where they really played with the album art with like a lot of inserts and a lot of die cuts, and like, for instance, one of them is the inside of a car, but when you put the sleeve over it, it's the outside of the car, but Cheech and Chong are still in it. There's just so much fun stuff. Like, you visually can really play with a comedy album before you ever get a chance to even listen to it. Like, there's so much,
right.
It's stage setting.
And I believe that, I could be wrong on this, but I believe my mom showed me an insert that was like a giant rolling paper.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
They're hard to find with the paper in it. I have one. But yes, it's like it's a giant, like 11 by 14 sheet or something that is folded in half that you could use to make the largest joint in the world. It's fantastic.
Right. Yeah. No. Well, and that's like, I mean, before I started doing this comic book stuff, I worked in marketing, and I was a creative director. and my whole job was branding. So I would work with the company to create not only just like a logo, but we would create a whole style for them. Down to what type of fonts you're choosing for the website. Things like that. So my whole thing is creating an image for a product. And, doing things like that where it's not just an album, you've got all these other little things that you can explore and add to the experience, of the album or of whatever product you've made, just makes it that much better for the fans.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, you're there's so much, like I said, it's so much stage setting. It's the equivalent, well, maybe not exactly the same, but it's the equivalent of sucking somebody in with a really great comic book cover. Are there ever inserts in comic? Are there ever comics that have like done more than just a flat cover? Have there like done anything crazy, like weird, I don't know, cutaway shit in it? I don't know anything about comics.
I mean, honestly, aside from what I'm familiar with, aside from maybe the occasional little ad for something that they insert,
right?
I don't really think they do anything that adds to the story. Now, I will say what's pretty notorious in comics is they do like fold outs. So you could have like a cover that just, when you open it, it just kind of folds out into 4 or 5 times as long as a standard comic book size. But I haven't really heard much about inserts. But I will say, when I did my first book, I self-published it. I did a few things like that, where things throughout the story, little papers, little pieces of small artwork, that kind of went with the story. I included in the Kickstarter for fans. So
that's awesome.
I tried to do things like that whenever I can, whenever it's feasible and I have the time. And at that moment, I had the time. Right now, not so much.
Right. Well, I mean, that's like, that is a comic book. As speaking again as a person who's barely read any, that is a comic book I would buy. That is because I'm obsessed with props, and I'm obsessed with stuff from fiction turning real. And if you did a comic book where a guy had a really cool looking business card and you had the business card in the comic book, I'd be like, oh yeah, no, that's my shit. Even if I don't care,
right.
Like that involves me just enough that I'm going to read this entire thing and I'll probably be invested in it by the end of it. It's just, there's I don't know, it's something visceral.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and, the comic that I'm pitching, well, not pitching, but comic book that I have right now that is going to be put into a collector's edition. I'm trying to do some of that stuff. So I don't want to get too much into that, but I made like this retro comic book version of a cover style. So it's like an old 1950s sci-fi, style.
Awesome.
But featuring, the characters from the book and like the title of the book and everything like that. And I showed it off and everyone loved it so much. I talked to the publisher and he was like, hey, why don't we do like a variant of the first issue so people can actually get a version of that with this retro, cover. And Amazing. It was just one of those things where it was like, wow, like that's a cool added thing, that just makes the whole experience of the story like that much better, because the big selling point for me for it is retro sci-fi nostalgia, so, why not try to take that and go as far as we can with it, within financial reason.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the one thing that, that kind of holds back. Like when I see even really good comics, or pardon me, see, there's my brain, really good comedy albums. Like there's not, other than, hey, this is a really cool color for a comedy album, they don't really do much along the way of making it interactive, or at least appearing to be interactive, because it's expensive as hell. It's really expensive. Yeah. But speaking of things that are, cost people money but are worth it, let's talk about your Indiegogo.
Great. Yeah, sure.
Tell people about it.
Yeah, so like I was saying just a minute ago, it's a collected edition of my story, Feast or Famine. In a nutshell, the story is about an alternate universe where Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein partner together and they go on a space adventure.
I love this so much.
Yeah, well, it's all, like I said, it's all about, kind of a love letter to nostalgia, 1950s sci-fi, and the story obviously takes a major turn toward at the end, but up until that point, it's all just very turn of the century history, kind of mixed with this Flash Gordon, Lost in Space, 50s style sci-fi, that I feel like is a really cool mashup.
Mm-hmm.
So the book is going to be coming out later this fall, I believe in November.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like 100-page book. You get you can get just the book, or there's all kinds of other perks that you can get. Like I was just saying, there's a variant of the first issue that features the retro cover that you can only get through the Indiegogo campaign. It's not going to be sold in stores or on any website. And then I've got other kinds of art prints that are exclusive as well. We also have I'm going to be doing some commissions as well. So if you want to get a small commission, a larger one, if you want to get even like a full color watercolor commission, I'm doing those as well. I also have art lessons, portfolio reviews, lots of interactive things with me, and I'm still working on adding some other rewards as well. So I've added a magnet, I've added some stickers. We're working on adding coasters right now. I think we're just shy of like $100 to get to that coaster level.
Mm-hmm.
And then, since you talked about the standees so much, I might as well break a little news, because no one actually knows this just yet. I might even broadcast it after we talk. But when we hit our goal, when we hit our $5,000 goal, I'm going to add a Feast or Famine standee that features the two characters. So that'll be a fun little perk that you're only going to be able to get on the Indiegogo campaign.
Can I tell you, first of all, I'm looking at all the levels and they're ridiculously cheap. Like you guys, this is so reasonable that you get so much for so little that's amazing. People should absolutely, and just look up Feast or Famine on Indiegogo. I'll make sure to put a link on the website. But also I really, really, really want one of their ray guns. Like that's what as a prop obsessive, that's all I'm seeing right now. I really want a ray gun.
I'll tell you what, I played around with a lot of different options to try to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
The unfortunate part about it is, like we were just saying, it is so expensive.
Oh, of course. I cannot imagine to have that thing even 3D printed would still take a ton.
Right.
Oh man, there's so much good stuff in here. I also like that it is, like you say, it's got that nice retro style, but it also is new looking enough that it's its own thing. It's polished and man, this looks good. This is exciting.
Well, and I will say too, really quick,
yeah.
For those that aren't as familiar with the publisher, so the publisher is Alternate Comics,
mm-hmm.
and they do single issue comics as well as the trade collected editions. And the individual single issues, they actually print all of those on the old school newsprint.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not only like crazy interesting, because it's one of the things you don't find in a comic book store these days is a newsprinted comic of a modern story. But it's like half the price. A typical comic nowadays is like $3, $4, sometimes even $5
mm-hmm.
for an issue. All of the alternate comic single issues are between $1.50 and $2.
That's insane.
So, yeah, I mean, you can get I was telling people when it was just the single issues, you can get the entire Feast or Famine story 1 through 3 for less than $5.
Yeah.
So, to me, it's just a really good price point. And I mean, you get the trade collection for $10. I mean, most trade collections like that at similar page rates would be almost double that much.
Yeah. That's nuts. Because most of the time, if I'm not mistaken, you get that kind of semi-gloss, full bright color pages now, right? That's basically what it looks like. It's just a ton of comic book covers in terms of like the sheen.
Right,
now.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
the paper might be slightly thicker. It's not like crazy thick, but the one thing about it though is obviously the newsprint, it does have different qualities about it. There can be some, ink that bleeds, or ink that may not be as black as you may want it to be, as rich of a, because the paper soaks up a lot of the ink. But the trade collections that they do, and the Feast or Famine trade collection, will be printed on a digital press. So you will get an option, to if you already got the newsprint edition, to get it printed digitally in this trade collection. And really, get, I think, the best of both worlds, because I love the newsprint editions, frankly. I think they're really interesting, and I think it almost lends something extra, like you've been talking about this whole time, lends something extra to the experience, the immersion of, reading the story, because, it just looks like an old school comic.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man, that's wonderful. So people can go to Indiegogo, check that out. They can follow you. And I apologize, I said David earlier. Do you go by Dave?
Typically I go by Dave, but David's fine. My mother would love it. She hates when I say, my name's Dave. But no, I'll answer to both.
And on Twitter, you're at Dave Swartz Art. So it's Dave, DaveSwartz. And yeah, this has been super fun. I really appreciate you coming on here and talking about this, and talking about Cheech and Chong, because I can always talk about Cheech and Chong. If you do end up doing, a Cheech and Chong standee or something, I really need to see it. If I'm not the one to request it, which, by the way, your standees are very inexpensive too. Your standees are more than reasonable for somebody who, if you want some. How high are they? How tall? I wasn't sure how tall they were.
So there's two options. So you can get a short half figure. So it's basically just their torso up, and those stand about between I believe 4 to 6 inches.
Okay.
And then the tall full figure ones, they usually range between 8 and 10 inches.
Okay.
It typically depends on the character. So sometimes certain characters might need a little extra added height for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So, I want to be a little bit of flexible on that. And sometimes, if a character might wind up being too wide, then I might shorten up a little bit just because they're so wide.
Okay.
So little nuances like that. But for the most part, they're all under 12 inches. But if you want me to make it a little bigger, we could talk about that. I'm pretty flexible.
That's awesome. Dave, this has been super fun. You're more than welcome back anytime. Might get, usually in somebody's second appearance, we get even deeper into the detail and the comedy, which I think would be fun to do with somebody who's not a comedian per se. And you were a lot of fun to talk with. Thank you guys very much for listening. And as always, have a good thing. Comedy on Vinyl is a production of StolenDress Entertainment. It is produced by Mike Warden and is hosted and edited by Jason Klom. Our theme song was composed and performed by Richard Levinson. You can email us at podcast@comedyonvinyl.com. You can also send snail mail to StolenDress Entertainment, P.O. Box 805, Burbank, California, 91503. Subscribe to Comedy on Vinyl on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and anywhere else you can find podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It helps. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Comedy on Vinyl, or find everything in one place at comedyonvinyl.com. A major portion of Comedy on Vinyl has been underwritten by Stand Up Records. Please visit standuprecords.com for all your comedy needs, and tune in to the new Stand Up Records channel available on the Roku, where you can also find select episodes of this podcast. Visit StolenDress.com to listen to our other podcasts, watch videos, and imbibe freely of our multimedia content going back 15 plus years.